Um, somebody has like, sounds like they started a boat outside or something, and we don't have a boat dock or anything.
So Mike, what about other examples, like real life examples that people might be familiar with, not even maybe knowing that there's machine learning behind it?
So it's really in a lot of places in your day-to-day life now. Like one of the easy and really good examples is Netflix. So they started using machine learning heavily back in like 2012. They were sort of part of like the resurgence of machine learning and the new progress in the field, because they put out like an award for coming up with a good machine learning algorithm that anybody could enter and try to produce a good recommendation model. Like, what do I mean? So whenever you watch enough shows on Netflix, even just a few, it becomes pretty good at recommending what you should watch. It figures out what your taste is in shows and movies. That's a recommendation model, and they're everywhere. So like banks use it, Amazon uses it, even small businesses can gain access to recommendation models now. It's built into e-commerce platforms. Just out of the box, you can use them now. YouTube, when you finish a video, it has the autoplay. So it's going to automatically start playing another video, and that does a pretty good job. Like, it'll keep playing music in the same genre. It'll keep playing videos in the same theme of what you were just watching. So CHURN we talked about in episode 2, and it's a classification machine learning problem. And to recap, CHURN is just trying to identify which customers are likely to leave your subscription-based business. And ideally trying to figure out like a month or two ahead of time before they're actually going to leave, trying to predict that. That way your call center can call them up and try to keep them happy. Sometimes they haven't even thought about leaving yet, and you can go ahead and have a positive impact on them. So why is it a classification problem? Well, it's like this look-alike concept. We have a bunch of customers, we have a bunch of data on those customers, and we can look at our historic data, and we can find out which customers have left in the past, what features did they have, what things influenced them to leave. So like if they're missing a lot of payments, then that increases their chance to leave by quite a bit. Maybe all the people with high bills are also likely to leave. So those are simple concepts of identifying people who are going to leave. And why is it classification? It's because you want to predict whether or not they're going to leave and what the likelihood is. You can have like the high likelihood, the medium likelihood, and the low likelihood. That way you can target the people who are most likely.
This classification can also be used for just segmenting people, right?
Yeah, so you don't have to be talking about whether or not they're going to leave. Like, you can be talking about how valuable are they to my business, which is a similar problem. You're trying to find the people who are making the most profit. You could also look at like the demographics and interests. So that's more related to marketing. And there are tons of tricks and data, types of data that you can integrate to do like machine learning clustering and classification. That way you have like your existing customer set. You can identify the high value customers there, and you can look at their interests, and then you can go market to people who have those same interests if you have a way of getting that data.
I mean, it's like doing the Netflix recommendation for other things, right? Like you could have your segments and recommend products, services, maybe even creative communication,
Yeah, it's so crazy to think about that. Like, although those seem like wildly different problems, because you're talking about like movies versus people, but like these algorithms tend to have a lot of similarities. So it's really cool that like using the same tricks and the same types of algorithms, you can classify wildly different things and produce results.
And I also wanted to ask you about computer vision. What type of machine learning is that?
So computer vision is, instead of, I'm going to get slightly technical for a second, it's just like looking at the pixels in an image. So that's all the computer has to deal with, is the pixels in an image. And that's made wild gains over the years recently. So that gives us some really cool capabilities. To bring it back to reality, like I could take all the photos for like an Instagram profile for a brand, and I could do computer vision on it and find out what are the features that are showing up in this feed. So I take 500 photos, and I find that like they have a lot of pictures of people smiling, or they have a bunch of pictures of people hiking. But I'm not just getting one feature per image, I'm getting 10 or 15 or 20 because I'm identifying different objects, sometimes different feelings. So I end up with this data set that I can use to do analytics on and make decisions on that before wasn't a data set at all. It was a bunch of images, and maybe you get a feeling when you're scrolling through it, but like it wasn't like an actionable data set really. That's something that was really difficult in the past to make decisions on, right?
Yeah, I wanna touch on that because especially when you're a creative and you've got a feeling, you've got a special sensitivity for based on your experience to identifying what images will convey what, right? And that's sometimes difficult to explain because it's a feeling that comes from your experience as a human being. And now with what you just mentioned and computer vision, that can be used to help measure something that prior to this was only subjective and only coming from experience in a human way.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive how far we've come with being able to mimic that like intuition that the creatives might have for the feeling of an image. We're not there yet, but like we're able to determine if somebody is like excited or having fun using computer vision, and that's a pretty good gain. We're also able to identify things like beauty in images. So like if a person's looking at a photograph and they say like, oh, this is a beautiful like well shot photo.
And I also want to add that sometimes there's confusion where this is seen as a replacement for human creativity or for human capabilities. And I think it's completely the opposite. It's much more like a help, right? And something that will help you achieve things that were not able before, but your creativity and your ways of doing things should become more relevant.
Yeah, it's so good that you said that. It's augmenting what people can do. Like if we take this like data set that we generate from Instagram photos and we give it to the creative team that has been posting those photos, now all of a sudden they have a way of augmenting what they're already doing. And
Mhm.
I mean, you were saying earlier that people have a hard time keeping up with too many things in their mind when we were talking about the used cars. Like it's overwhelming. So this is a way of taking that overwhelming part of doing creatives because they might pump out like many creatives a week.
Mhm.
And now we have a data set that can help them slice and dice and find out what kind of creatives they've been putting out and see what's performing well, and they can use that to drive their performance decisions on creative later on.
We've seen a few examples of machine learning, but of course, this is just getting started, and we're going to see new cases and new examples every day. And as Michael was saying, these are exciting times to live in because we're witnessing this development.
So the reason I wanted to do this video and talk about this is if you have some basic understanding of like classification and regression and what machine learning actually is, then in your day-to-day lives with your job, you're going to start seeing examples of where you can use machine learning, and it's becoming so accessible now that you're going to have opportunities now or soon in the future to be able to use machine learning in your job that you never thought was possible.